Good evening, Purple family. Welcome to another episode of Shades of Purple, a Prince podcast. On tonight's episode, I'm going to be reviewing Morris Day's 2019 autobiography, On Time, A Princely Life in Funk. So to start off, I just want to say that Morris Day, he really showed a lot of respect for Prince in this book. 2019 and 2020 were years where there were quite a few Prince people, and I say Prince people, meaning people that worked with Prince or were in his band that were starting to come out with their own books. In 2020, Mark Brown, or Brown Mark, would come out with his autobiography. And then we also had, way back in the early 2000s, Des Dickerson also had an autobiography. And of course, we had Maite's that came out in 2017. Kim Berry's book, I believe, came out in 2019 as well. So we just had a slew of Prince camp people that came out with books shortly in the years shortly after Prince's death. And for Morris Day, I was really excited when I first read this book because I knew that, Morris and Prince had a very close relationship, and he didn't have that with a lot of men. Most of his closer relationships were with women. And so Morris Day was definitely an exception to that. They grew up together, and he really allowed Prince to have a voice in his story. And when I say that, I literally mean that he provided Prince with his own voice in the story. So when you read the book, Prince actually has his own words, or quote unquote, I guess you could say Prince's spirit or his ghost has his own say on Morris's story in italicized. And then Morris also has another character called MD, which is short for Morris Day. And so he has three characters in this book. And I'm going to get into the review, but I just wanted to tell you guys that I really appreciated his approach because he really, he knew where his bread was buttered, if that makes sense. He knew that without Prince, he wouldn't have been able to do the things that he did. And so because of that, he allowed Prince to really have his so-called say in the book. And I really appreciated that. And I think, excuse me, most Prince fans would appreciate that. So the book is really short. It's only about 200 pages. So I kind of felt like he left a lot of stuff out, but I mean, he reserved the right to do that. Of course, it's his life. But I really felt like he could have maybe delved into some other issues. And I remember around the time that he was doing promotion press for this book, if somebody asked a question, he would say, "It's in the book." But I don't know. I have to go back. I didn't get a chance to go back and review some of the interviews that he did, but I do remember that standing out is when, they, would ask a question, whether it's about Prince or something else, that would be his response. "Oh, it's in the book." But I don't know. Now, he did have a couple little juicy tidbits here and there that we're going to talk about. But for the most part, he just kept it really straight laced about himself. And he, like I said, he really was heavy on giving Prince his respect. And because he said that while he was getting ready to write this book, that Prince's spirit was just really all over him and really kind of, almost dictating to him what he should say. And so that comes across in the book, that Prince is still on his mind, and that he knew how Prince felt about, people talking about his personal life in particular. And, and he knew that, after, and of course Prince, knew that after he passed away, that there were going to probably be people in his camp that were going to come out with books about their experiences with him and all that. And so knowing that, I think Morris wanted to respect Prince's view on how he felt about that, while at the same time telling his story. So let's get right into it. So as I said, he really has Prince, because in the title, On Time, A Princely Life in Funk. So Prince was the first word in the book. And Prince was, without a doubt, Morris's biggest musical influence, shaped his musical life. They had this wonderful, wonderful brotherhood that had its ups and downs. And Morris stated he could not write this book without Prince. Therefore, he's going to make sure that Prince's voice is heard. So the Prince voice expresses his concerns about Morris doing a book about his life and including their relationship in it. The Prince voice says he doesn't want Morris twisting his words. So this is, the deep understanding that Morris had about Prince's personality and the things that he knew that Prince would be, concerned about. And so Morris assures Prince that this won't be the case. Morris talks about, some of his early musical influences. And he talks about, especially drumming, because of course we know Morrissey was a drummer. So he looked at people like James Brown's drummers, J-Bo Starks and Claude Stubblefield, Tower of Power's drummer, David Garibaldi. And then he talked about something called, and this is right in like the first few pages of the book, what I'm quoting. And he talks about something called the groove. And he said the groove is born out of the one, which is the maximum impact, the kick, the hook, the anchor. So basically talking about trying to, being a musician, in Morris's words, is all about trying to find that groove, that ultimate, the ultimate like hook, or, just being in the moment. That's what it's all about. And for drummers especially, it's important for the drummer to find the groove in a song, because the drummer is going to be the person that's carrying that groove to a large extent. So he talks a little bit about that, but then he goes straight into, his autobiographical information. I cannot talk. He was born on December 13th, 1956 in Springfield, Illinois. He grew up seeing his mom being physically abused by his stepfather, unfortunately. His biological father was divorced from his mother by the time Morris was born. So he wasn't around much, but he ended up having another family. So Morris had half siblings like Prince did on his dad's side. So he grew up just having this love for music. And he would describe going to church, dressed up in the pinstripe suits that we would come to know him for later. He would have the pinstripe suits, the two-tone shoes, because supposedly he said that his grandfather was supposedly a pimp. So his mother would kind of dress him up like that in a way. Back in the day, and it's still a little bit now, Black people especially love to really dress up when we go to church, especially on Easter Sunday. Like, you really show out with all of the yellows, the pinks, the blues, all those pretty Easter colors. So I can just imagine how Morris Day looked like on an Easter Sunday, dressed to the nines, and he was only like 9 or 10 years old. Just picture that in your mind. You can. So they end up moving to Minneapolis and stayed with his mom's cousin and her husband, which Morris called Uncle Spike. And Uncle Spike was his biological father's brother. And Uncle Spike worked for a guy named Joe Buhalton, who was a hustler who owned several small businesses and was a pimp and a drug dealer. His mom would later hook up with this character. And this character, Joe, he was married, but also at the same time, Morris's uncle Spike was also messing around with this guy, Joe's wife. So they had a lot of drama going on in that house that they ended up moving to Minneapolis, because they left Illinois because of, his mother's abusive boyfriend at the time. So they ended up moving to Minneapolis, and it was supposed to just be a layover because Morris's mother wanted to eventually move to California, which is what she ended up doing many years later. But Minneapolis was not supposed to be their permanent home. They were just staying there with the cousin until they could get to California. But as we all know, that didn't happen. They ended up staying in Minneapolis. And so he had all of this drama surrounded in this house with his mom sleeping with this drug dealer, and his uncle messing with this drug dealer's wife. And so it was a lot going on in the house. So he needed an outlet. So he was glad to just, go to school and kind of chill out. And, he really got into music. Now, he got a drum set from his mom when he was about 4 years old, because his mom got tired of him just drumming on stuff all over the house. And so she finally got him a drum set. So from the time he was about 4 or 5 years old, he was playing the drums. And so by the time he got to junior high, he was pretty good. So he wanted to get into a band. That was kind of his goal. And this is where we first hear about Prince. Morris first got introduced to Grand Central before he met Prince. A girl that Morris was talking to, and this is when he was in high school now, early high school. She wanted to go hear a band at this Friday night show at Central High School. And Morris at the time, he went to North High School. So he said the first time that he saw Prince was at this show that they did at Central High. He said Prince had on a black turtleneck, some wacky bell bottoms, and pink woolen girl gloves with the fingers cut out so he could string his guitar. And of course, he had a huge blown out afro. Morris also observed that at the age of 15, Prince was already playing the guitar like Eric Clapton or Jeff Beck. He was music. So very early on, from his first time seeing him perform, Morris was very impressed with Prince. And so he eventually kind of befriended Andre Simone, and they would hang out and smoke weed and, chill out together. And so one day, Andre Simone said, "Hey, let's go to your house and kick it." And so they did that. And so Andre noticed Morris's drum set. And so Andre is like, "I didn't know you played drums." And he was like, "Play something for me." And so he ends up playing the drums. And Andre was just blown away by Morris's playing. And so he was like, "Hey man, you need to come and audition for our band, Grand Central." And he was like, "Really?" Yeah. And so what was going on at this time with Grand Central was Chaz Smith, who was a current drummer. He was a football player, so he always had football practice. So he ended up missing a lot of the rehearsals. And so they were looking to kind of replace him. So he went to the audition and he got the gig. He said, though, he noticed that everybody, was really nice to him except for Prince. Prince was the only one that kind of didn't really speak to him. And he, was just very standoffish for a while. That's how it was. And so, but eventually though, the longer he stayed in the band, him and Prince really did get to know each other. And after Prince got kicked out of his dad's house and moved in with Andre, he wanted the band to rehearse more. So Prince would show up at all hours of the night wanting to use Morris's 4-track recorder that he had to record music. And Morris said Prince would bang on the door until he would let him in. He said some nights he would let him in, some nights he would just let him bang on the door. And there were other times where, he would just want to just smoke weed and chill out, him and Andre, and not, rehearse. But, Prince was all about the music. He was all about wanting to record more and more music. So even then, he had, a prolific mind. And he just, he wasn't into doing drugs or drinking or any of that. He only cared about music. That's all he cared about. But Andre and Morris cared about more than that. They cared about drinking, smoking, and, just being regular teenage boys. Now, one thing that Morris said that Prince cared about, not as much as music, but he did also care about girls. Prince, he said, was a girl magnet. The girls really liked Prince, and Prince really liked them right back. But outside of that, it was all music for Prince. So Morris's mother eventually became the band's manager, and she would pay for them to have studio time to cut demos. And they would, go to places like New York to talk to record executives to try to get them a deal. And, she really tried, to put them out there. And then another time he talks about Grand Central when they were doing these recordings. They would of course, like most bands would, when they would perform, they would have a set list. So I just wanted to talk about that, like some of the songs that they would do. They would do songs like Shining Star by Earth, Wind and Fire. And Prince loved the groups like Rufus, of course, because he loved, Shaka Khan. And his falsetto was even hitting back then. And he would sing the hell out of songs like Sweet Thing and Tell Me Something Good. And other songs they played were like Isley Brothers, Fight the Power, Bootsy's Rubber Band, Funkadelic, Get Off Your Ass and Jam, and LTD's Love Ballad, which is one of my personal favorites, and Sly's Dance to the Music. So Moore says Prince was, like I said, a ladies' man. He said from very early on, girls buzzed around your pint-sized ass like bees around honey. So he said other than that, it was just strictly music with Prince. So during the time that Morris's mother was Grand Central's manager, she tried to do all she could to make sure that they got gigs, got recording time, and all this. But Prince was rather impatient. It was around this time that he started recording with Owen Huzzy, but also the other guy, Chris Moon. So, and Morris kind of got, he became aware of this, but there was really nothing that he could do. And Huzzy got Prince to do a jingle for a ladies' clothing store called Gigi's. Now, I didn't know that. So he kind of knew that, Prince was looking to kind of maybe go out on his own. And Morris claims that the demo tape that Warner Brothers heard from Prince claiming that he was playing all the instruments was actually a Grand Central recording. Now, I don't know how true this is. And Morris did admit that Prince was capable of doing a demo of him playing all the instruments, but he claims that's not what that demo was that Owen Huzzy gave to Warner Brothers that secured Prince's recording contract. Like I said, this is Morris claiming this, so I don't know. But it does kind of make you wonder why, if Prince was able to record a demo with him doing all the instruments, why didn't he present that instead of just presenting a demo with Grand Central instruments on it? But if that's the case, I do know that there's this guy on YouTube called Sinnick, Sinnick 22, that has refuted Morris's claim. And he actually has proof of that. And it's kind of hard to describe his proof, but he basically was able to find like an invoice or something like that had the set list that was on that original demo. And those songs were not included in any of Grand Central's known set lists. So therefore, he's saying that Prince's demo was original. Like I said, once again, we don't really know. Only Prince and, really knows that. And of course, he's not here to say yay or nay about that. But anyway, so Grand Central, kind of changed their name after Prince left. They became Champagne. But like Prince said, after Morris said, once Champagne started and Prince left, it was like having Desi with no Lucy after Prince left the band. And so it wasn't too long after they became Champagne that the group kind of broke up. And the new name, he said, fizzled out like Champagne. So Morris dropped out of high school at the 11th grade. And he had his first child, a girl named Teona, at 18. And he admitted that, he lacked the maturity at the time to be a good father. But he wanted to do right, but he just didn't have that mindset. So Morris and his mom decided to move again to Maryland. And it was there that Morris learned about jazz drumming. And he played what he could, but for the most part, he was just a broke-ass drummer. His mom helped him out and got him an apartment, and his baby mama and his daughter moved from Minneapolis, and they stayed with Morris briefly. But Morris said him and his baby mama stayed in each other's way, is what he said. So they didn't work out, and so his baby mama and his daughter, they ended up moving back to Minneapolis. So Morris eventually found a dead-end job working at Montgomery Ward's rental car counter when he heard Soft and Wet on the radio. He went to the record store that same day and bought Prince's debut album, For You, for $6.98. He loved what he heard. He could hear that Prince had made the Grand Central sound slicker, more polished, and he dug it. He said that it was real funky. Morris and his mom moved again, finally, to San Jose, California. So he stayed out there they moved back in with the same cousin after she divorced Morris's uncle, Spike. And so there were like 9 people living in a 3-bedroom house. So you can imagine things got a little cramped up in there. And Morris decided it was time for him to go back to Minneapolis to kind of hook up with Prince and see if maybe he could help, do something. Because Prince had just put out his second album, the self-titled Prince. So he got back into Prince's camp through Andre, like he did before, and he became Prince's videographer. So he would basically tape all of the live performances that Prince and his band would do. And that's not, of course, what he wanted to do. Of course, he wanted to be a drummer. Prince knew that he wanted to be a drummer, but he had a drummer with Bobby Z. And so that's not what he needed. He needed someone that could record those performances, because what Prince would do is he would go back and kind of look and see what worked, what didn't work with the performance. So he wanted them all to be recorded. So that's what he had Morris doing. So Morris said he played the drums on 2 songs though. So he would let him play the drums apparently every now and then. But he played the drums on 2 songs on Controversy. He said the title track and Let's Work. And I believe that to be true, because Morris, you can almost tell the difference if you really listen to enough of Morris's drumming. And if you listen to Prince's drumming, they're very different. And Morris's style of drumming is, I would even say it was a little funkier than Prince's. So Morris and Prince did the first Time album. Now we're up to the Time album. But before we do that, so Prince wanted to either purchase what would become the song Party Up from Morris, because how that happened was him and Morris were hanging out and at Prince's house recording music and, just chilling. And so Morris started a groove that Prince really dug. And so he said, hey, I will give you $10,000 cash to buy the song outright, or I can help you get a record deal. And so Morris, wanting to, get into music officially, he took the record deal. So before they could, get into Morris's record deal and all this, Prince decided he wanted Morris to have a band. And he also wanted to start recording music for that band. Now, at the time, the band did not have they didn't have a name when they first started recording what would become the Time's first album. But it was all Prince and Morris. And they all recorded it, according to Morris, at Prince's Cowwood Trail studio. They would also go to the clubs to see what was getting people dancing. They became, as Morris said, mad scientists. And they would, really see what the appeal was for songs like the Brothers Johnson's Stomp and Shalimar's The Second Time Around. And Morris and Prince loved jazz, particularly Miles Davis. And Prince, he loved the songwriting of people like Johnny Mitchell and Bob Dylan. And so Morris said that he introduced Prince to Frank Zappa. And Prince grew to have an appreciation for Zappa's creativity and innovation with rock music. So they were really collaborating around the time that the Time's first album came out. And it was around this time that the Time band also was finally formed from the Flight Time band, which consisted of Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis and Jelly Bean Johnson on drums and Monte Moyer on keyboards. And this would basically become the Time. Alexander O'Neal was originally the frontman singer, but he got to, wanted to get up. He cared more about money. He wanted, and I guess Prince wasn't paying enough money for him. And so he was out. And so Morris was kind of like, okay, so we got to, figure out what we're going to do about this drummer. I mean, not the drummer, the frontline singer. So Prince was like, well, why don't you do it? And Morris was like, well, I'm not really with that, man. I can't sing. And so Prince told him, stick your hand in your pocket and just be cool. So that's what Morris ended up doing. And so he became the frontline singer for the time. And Alexander O'Neal, he would later say that, he didn't hold any grudges against Prince or anything like that. But one of Prince's not as probably well-known other names, pseudonyms that he would often use, like Jamie Starr. Another one that he would use was called Alexander Nevermind. And so I'm pretty sure that was in reference to Alexander O'Neal and the fact that he was like, I need money. Like, I mean, of course, Prince was paying them, but I guess the money was just sounding kind of funny to Alexander and he wasn't with it. So anyway, it was through the time and all this that Morris's character, as we know him, Morris Day, was born. And really, this character was really Prince. It was Prince's personality. And this type of, this actually has a name, what this character of Morris became. It's called ego merging, is what it's called. So the character that we see Morris Day in, like Purple Rain, for example, is really Prince. It's an aspect of Prince's personality. And so when people say, well, Morris Day and how he was acting in Purple Rain, well, that's really how Prince would act. Like, that was kind of like an aspect of his personality. Just like with a lot of the pseudonyms that Prince would use, like Jamie Starr and Joey Coco and Tora Tora, these are all aspects of Prince's personality. And so Morris Day was just another one of those personalities. And he said that he didn't mind doing it. He was just like, he appreciated it. To him, it was like an honor, to play this character that Prince pretty much invented for him. And it was while the time went on their first tour that Morris started falling into the trap of drugs and alcohol, mostly drugs. And he was also like hooking up with all these random women. And despite the fact that, he was still in this relationship with his baby mama, this a long distance relationship, he was, doing cocaine, and he was doing more than just smoking weed at this point during the Time's first tour. And also, next up was Purple Rain not too soon after. So we're like at, to give you chronological, we're probably about at 1982 or so. Oh, because I got to tell you guys about the infamous food fight. So the Time, when they finally got on the road with Prince during the Controversy tour, they were a hit. Like, the audience loved the Time. I mean, they were just basically kicking Prince and the Revolution's ass. Okay. Like, I mean, there were some nights where, kind of like what happened with Rick James and Prince. Like, Rick James was complaining that, this little motherfucker got me working all kind of hard, talking about Prince, because Prince was just opening for Rick during the Fired It Up tour. But I mean, the audience was just loving Prince so much. And by the time, Rick James took his high drunk ass out there, he wasn't performing as well. And not to say that this was the case with Prince and the Revolution, which they weren't technically the Revolution until the 1999 album, but you get it. But the Time would just, drain the audience. They would just, be so hyped that by the time Prince and the Revolution came out, they were still there, but you could tell that they were still really hyped up from the Time. So with all that going on, Prince kind of felt, some type of way. He was a little intimidated, and which led to, what happened at the end of the Controversy tour in Cincinnati. So there was this big food fight that happened while the Time were doing their set. And by the time Prince and his band got off, there was just this all and out food fight. Like they ended up putting Jesse Johnson, who was the guitarist for the time, they hooked him to put him up on a hanger or something in the closet of a hotel or a dressing room and left him there, and then put all kind of mustard and whipped cream and all that type of stuff on him. I mean, it was just a mess. And so, but this is the crazy part. So Prince approached Morris and said, hey, you got to pay for this. And Morris was like, fuck you, no, I don't. Like, what are you talking about? Like, this was, this just wasn't on me. This was on you and your people and all this. But, he ended up having to pay for it, which, I mean, I kind of understand. But at the same time, I really do felt like Prince and maybe members of the revolution could have also helped. Like, they should have all pitched in to fix that damage that was done to those hotel rooms in Cincinnati. But that's neither here nor there. So I was just like, wow, that happened. And so on the 1999 tour, the following year, which it was called the Triple Threat Tour, because by now we had Vanity 6, and Prince had the time playing behind a curtain. They were basically, he had them basically backing up Vanity 6 before they would do their set, and then Prince would go last. And Moore said that, the time members really kind of resented that because they really didn't get paid nothing but $25 extra for playing behind the curtain for Vanity 6. I was just like, oof. But $25, back then, I might have been more than what it would be now. But still, and again, it just sounded kind of crappy. So this was, okay, so now we're up to Almost Purple Rain. So right before, in March of 1983, this is when Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis gets fired by Prince from the time because they ended up missing a show. They went to Atlanta to do some music with the SOS band, and they missed their flight to Texas because they had a show that they missed in San Antonio, and they missed it because a snowstorm hit Atlanta and shut down the airport. And so when they came back, Prince found out that they had went to go do some music with the SOS band, and Prince had this rule that you were not allowed to work with other artists. And for the longest, Jimmy and Terry wanted to do that as well as Morris, but Prince would not allow that. And so when he found out, he fired them. And this really hurt Morris's feelings. Like he said, his heart was broken because he really felt like, the band was just gutted after that. And so he didn't really feel the same anymore about the band, and he really didn't, his heart wasn't in the music anymore. So by the time Purple Rain started filming, and this was after the time that Jimmy and Terry left and they were replaced, but, for the movie, his heart was just not in it. And he was also, doing more drugs, and he just wasn't in a good headspace when the filming of Purple Rain. And he even admitted that, him and Prince's relationship was at its worst during the filming of Purple Rain. They had an exchange where some shoving happened between him and Prince because Morris came late to the set all the time because he was, too busy, doing drugs and sleeping. And he didn't really take the movie very serious. And even when they were doing Prince had sent everybody to go to acting coaches and acting classes. And he would just be the class clown. Like, he did not take the acting classes serious. And it was a problem, until finally, Prince kind of confronted him about it, got in his face and shoved him. And so there was this scuffle where they almost came to fisticuffs. They almost came to blows. But luckily, cooler heads did, prevail. And Prince got pulled away by his big bodyguard chick. And then Jelly Bean Johnson pulled, Morris off of Prince. And so he talks about that. It was just like, look, I was hurt, after, he fired my boys from the time, I really didn't feel like, I didn't want to do any music anymore. Because he hated the fact that, the band was just not the same anymore. But he knew that he had to do the movie. And so he did it, and he was paid $50,000 Not for himself, though. The $50,000 also included the fee for the band. So he actually had to share that $50,000 and disperse it out among the different Time members. And it was also during this time that they did Ice Cream Castles, which was the third and probably the most well-known, I would dare say, of the Time albums, because it has the mega hits on there, Jungle Love and The Bird. And he talks about how he kind of invented the dance for The Bird, because this was back when they were on the road. I don't know if it was through the Triple Threat Tour or the Controversy Tour, but one of them where they would kind of play porn on their tour bus. And but this one particular porn video that they watched, it was almost like a porn video, but it was horror. And Morris was like, I hate horror. I hate, scary stuff. So he ended up taking that tape off and he put on the Flintstones. And if y'all remember, the Flintstones, was during the Stone Age where they had like dinosaurs, and the pterodactyl was one of those birds that had the big wings, like a big bat almost. And so he saw the way the pterodactyl was flapping his wings in the Flintstones episode. And so that's how he came up with the dance for The Bird. So, but moving on. So there were a few times that, more than a few times that I would probably suspect, but I want to read a couple of pages where Morris kind of goes into, a little bit about their relationship and how, especially when he was on drugs, how, like, he tells us one story where he went to Prince's house and asked him for $400, and it was during like a snowstorm, and he had forgot to put on socks with his shoes. And so he came, he said that Prince looked down at his shoes and could tell that, he was definitely not himself, and he probably did have some reservations, but he did give him the money. And he remembered, stuff like that, not so much fondly, but the fact that Prince was, willing to do that despite knowing that he was probably on drugs. And Morris also seemed to think that the song Pop Life was about him, where he's talking about what you're putting in your nose, is that where all your money goes? He kind of felt like the Prince was talking about him in that song. And we really don't know if that's the case, but you never know. But I'm going to read, this was on page 98, about a time that I thought was interesting that he talks about with his relationship with Prince. So he says, Morris says, on a lonely Los Angeles evening, I was feeling restless and decided to head over to Prince and see what was shaking. Rode over in my rented Benz, top down, starry sky, neon night. The city was buzzing. And then MD, the MD character, he always writes in bold print. So MD said, I was buzzed. Love that buzz. That buzz brightens all the colors. Chasing the buzz, catching the buzz, watching it slip away, and then chasing it some more. Let's chase that buzz. I pulled up to the gate and punched in the magic numbers. The gate slowly opened, allowing me to cruise in and park next to a rose silver cloud. Door was unlocked. Party underway. 4 of Prince's sexiest sexies were lounging around the living room. Morris is here, shouted one, all smiles. Looking sharp, MD, said another with an even bigger smile. I appreciated being appreciated. And when it came to these friendly ladies, I was doing some deep appreciation of my own. The chit chat was easy, the vibe relaxed, the TV tuned to Prince videos. Since I had long broken up with Jennifer, I was free as a bird. One of the chicks asked me to sit next to her on the couch. Another set herself down at my feet. Wasn't sure what would happen next, but I felt like I was in the right place at the right time. Then Prince arrived. The vibe switched up in a second. He stared at me and said, "What are you doing here?" "Hanging." "This is your house to hang. Get out." Just like that. Man, I was wounded. Didn't even answer back. At this point, we've been through a lot together. At different times, we even dated the same chicks. In spite of that, when it came to the ladies, there had never been a crossword between us. Not even back in the Grand Central days. This was something new, something cruel. I got out, went back to my hotel, and stewed. So I thought that was interesting that, that they, kind of shared some of the same women. But on this particular night, Prince was like, no, I'm not having it. And so then he talks about another scenario that even Morris admitted kind of gave him the creeps. He said that while they were on tour once, that Prince had asked him to put makeup on his back. And so Prince says in italics, don't make it seem like something it wasn't. And then Morris says, I don't know what to make of it. Still don't. All I can say is that it gave me the creeps. I don't know whether I was being teased, tempted, or tortured. We never discussed it. And then Prince said, nothing to discuss, except that I was made to feel like your valet until you got famous with your own valet. And of course, Prince is talking about Jerome Benton. But so yeah, little stuff like that he kind of hinted at. Now, he did say that he always believed and still believes, most likely, that Prince was straight. And so he never, had any, any kind of story saying that he thought Prince was gay or anything like that. He said that Prince was straight as a gate. But that particular story about Morris putting makeup on Prince's back, I mean, on the surface, it doesn't sound like anything, and it probably isn't. But I would be curious as to what would make Prince want him to do that, So I don't know if he was just, like you said, if he was trying to see what Morris would do, or who knows. We all know that Prince was different. He was a different type of cat. So who really knows? But so anyway, so to continue the story, so after Purple Rain, he moved out to Los Angeles, and he just continued to be in a bad spot with the drugs. And he said, had it not been for his mother and his sister, who kind of came to his rescue, he said that he probably wouldn't be with us today. So he got off drugs, he got into rehab, and that's when he started working on his first solo album, because he was able to get a separate deal from Warner Brothers after he got out of his contract with Prince. He had to pay like $300,000 to get out of that contract. And then he was able to do The Color of Success, which was his first album. And then he would go on to do 2 more albums. And the Time in 2011 would do their own album called Condensate. But before that, the Time would do a 4th album called Pandemonium, which they would put out around the time of Graffiti Bridge. And he talked about Graffiti Bridge as well in that whole time, and how, at the time he didn't really understand the concept of Prince's idea for the movie, and he's not by himself. There's a lot of people that didn't. And also during this time in the late 80s, he hooked up with another woman, got married, had 2 more children, and by the mid 90s, he met another woman, and that he ended up cheating on his wife with, and they had a baby together. And that brings us to about the time right before Prince's death. And he said that he heard about Prince's death while he was on a flight, and he didn't want to believe it, after, everything that they had been through. And he talked about some other things. I'm trying to just quickly summarize. But he talked about when Prince first became a Jehovah's Witness, and how he actually did not want to do music with Morris because Morris refused to become a Jehovah's Witness. So they had been working on some music, and I assume, just like Morris did, that music is still in the vault to this day. But because Morris did not want to become a Jehovah's Witness, Prince did not want to pursue another album. And I just thought that was, kind of, I don't want to say wrong, but Prince was very dedicated to his Jehovah's Witness beliefs at this time. And he said this was around, right after he converted in the early 2000s. And he talked about another gig that was supposed to have happened on 7/7/07 that they didn't get compensated. They didn't end up performing. Well, they ended up getting compensated for their flight. But after that, from 2007 to 2016, they did not really communicate. And he said that he really regrets that now, obviously. But January of 2016 was when he last saw him, because the Time did perform at Paisley Park. And he said that after the performance, him and Prince sat down in Paisley Park, and Prince told Morris for the very first time, after 40 years together, almost as friends, that he loved him. And Morris, I could just hear the emotion in the book when he said this, because he said that he never thought that he would ever hear anything like that from Prince. And, and of course we know 2 months later, Prince would pass away. And so he gave really like this heartfelt, you really have to read the book for yourself, because I've already given away a lot as is, but he really has just like this heartfelt chapter that talks about how Prince's death affected him, and how, the Prince will always be his brother, that he was just so shocked when Prince said that he loved him that last time. But he said that, he said, "I love you too, brother." And they hugged. And he said that he looks back fondly on that he was able to, not even without even knowing it, closing that chapter with his brother, with his friend. And so it's just really a beautiful story. It has it has its ups and downs, but if I would give it on a scale of 7 Purple Hearts, I would definitely give it like a 6, for sure. Like I said, he was very, very respectful of Prince in this book. And he really made the book about, their friendship, their brotherhood. That was the highlight of the book for me. And like I said, it's a really easy read. It's only 200 pages. So I hope that this review will kind of help you decide whether or not you want to read it or not. But he really did. I think Morris Day really opened up himself in this book. It was really a true autobiography in every sense of the word, because he really talked about his struggles. And I think he also, these type of books help other people that are going through the same thing. So in many ways, I'm sure that this book was very therapeutic for Morris, in the fact that he just had to get it out. He had to just, let everybody know, how close him and Prince actually were. Because, a lot of times you really couldn't tell, especially when they, when the time, when they kind of fell off a little bit, and Prince and Morris off and did his own thing with his solo albums. And he did have a little success, because y'all remember the song Fishnet that was on The Color of Success? That was Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis produced that song. And that was probably one of Morris Day's probably most well-known single songs, solo songs, is Fishnet. Now, if you haven't heard it, I'll probably go ahead and put it on the Facebook page so you can listen to it, but it's a great, great song. And he did 2 other albums as well. I can't even think of the names of the other one. The Color of Success is, like I said, probably his most well-known solo album. It was the first one that came out, I think, in 85 or 86, like right after he left Prince's camp. And then he did another one in the late 80s, around the time that Prince was doing Sign of the Times. And then he did another one in the 90s. So, and then of course The Time and their albums. They did Pandemonium around the time of Graffiti Bridge, and then they came together as the original 7 in 2011 and put out Condensate. And they had to go by the name the original 7 because Prince would not allow them to use the name The Time. And we do know, just like a year or two ago, the Prince estate was also trying to stop Morris from touring as Morris Day and The Time. And I don't know if that was ever really dissolved or not, but I do know that last year when Morris came to the Arkansas State Fair, he was still going by Morris Day and The Time. So I don't know, maybe the estate finally allowed him to go ahead and use the name. But anyway, for those that don't know, like I said, Morris Day is still with us. He's a character still. And I know that he's kind of winding down his musical career now, I believe. But definitely check out his individual solo albums. Like I said, I can't think of the other 2 albums off the top of my head, but The Color of Success, like I said, is the most well-known album. So check that one out for sure. And I'll probably, once I think of it, I'll probably put the other 2 albums in a post on Facebook or something like that. So you'll at least know the name of those albums so you can check them out. So anyway, I think that's about it, y'all. So hope you enjoyed this episode of the Shades of Purple podcast. And I will see y'all guys in If not next week, the week after. I got some more content coming for you. So until then, peace and be wild, and may you live to see the dawn. Bye.